So for those of you who have heard this before, please bear with me. Because what I want to talk about tonight is what we're cultivating and a little bit about how. And how metta bhavana, the cultivation of metta, fits into the teachings as a whole. So metta, its qualities and its context. As I said this morning, the basic definition of metta, which is translated into English as loving kindness, so I like just the word metta, is the boundless well-wishing for the welfare and benefit of living beings.
Can you say the definition again?
The boundless well-wishing for the welfare and benefit of living beings. And this boundless part is important. It is said to be without limits. And what that refers to is its evenness across all beings whatsoever. So, whatever living beings there are, may they be well, happy, and peaceful. And that wish in a mind of pure metta is exactly the same for oneself and for any other being. So, in the Christian tradition, people talk about caritas. So, the love for all beings. But metta is not love in the sense that we know it. And that's why I don't like the word loving kindness so much. It's that simple well-wishing. It's much more grounded than any emotional experience of love. It's simple. It's grounded. It's not anything flashy. It's very cool. So Sayadaw U Indaka, our metta teacher in Burma, speaks of metta aircon. And air conditioning, it just refers to that coolness of air conditioning. So it's this limitless kindness without emotional attachment. So the texts speak by way of deepening the definition of this, of the near enemies and the far enemies of metta. So the far enemy is easy to understand. It is what is furthest away from metta. And this is any form of ill will, dosa in Pali. Any form whatsoever. So irritation, anger, fear, all of these are forms of dosa. And when metta is strong and powerful in the mind, there is what is called in the texts a substitution of opposites, so that the purity of metta replaces all those forms of dosa. The two cannot coexist. And the Buddha first spoke or taught metta as a practice to a group of monks who had been practicing in the forest, who were beset by tree devas, celestial beings, who were trying to scare them away.
Deva negativi.
And these devas were doing all sorts of things that were terrifying all the monks, hoping they'd all go away. And they did. They went running back to the Buddha. And the Buddha said, sorry, you have to go back where you were, because this is the perfect place for you to practice. But here is your practice and your protection. So metta is a practice that offers us protection from dosa, from ill will, any form of it, fear included. That's the far enemy. The near enemy is a little harder to discern, because it's any form of what the texts call sentimental attachment. And if we think of metta as love, we're going to confuse the two, because they're not the same thing. It's very, very common on long metta retreats, when people stay with one category for a long time, for people to begin the category of the dear friend and come in and say, oh, I'm so full of metta, there's so much love for this person. And they get the instruction to please continue, and for a couple of days, and then they come back and they say, oh, that wasn't metta, was it? What I'm feeling now is so much more peaceful. So as we purify the heart with this practice, we descend through these layers of near enemy, far enemy, to something that is very cool and very peaceful, and that it's that simple well-wishing. So the Buddha spoke about cultivation, development of metta. And I really like the image of cultivation. It's why I use often that metaphor of planting seeds. What we are cultivating or developing, though, it's not like planting a seed that sprouts. We're developing the skill of accessing the pure mind of metta. This cultivation is actually an uncovering. It's a revealing of the pure mind that's already there in all of us, but it's clouded by greed, by hatred, by delusion. Which is why I also say, don't try to create something and send it, because that's extra. That capacity for loving kindness is already there in each of us. We don't have to create it. We just create the conditions for accessing it. So I'll have more to say about that tomorrow. Just to emphasize that what we're doing here is clearing the mind, cleaning the mind so that we can see what's actually there. And we can live from what is actually there. So the Buddha spoke often about what he called the liberation of mind through loving kindness. And this liberation is not the same kind of liberation as we access in Vipassana. It's specifically a liberation of mind from dosa, from ill will, any form of it. And this is such an important and powerful thing. Not just in our life here and now, but going forward into future existences. So in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha says this: a person should develop the liberation of mind by loving kindness. No one can take their body with them when they die. Mortals have mind as their basis. So, we start with the mind, and it leads us places, in this life and in other lives. And developing freedom from ill will of any kind is a huge protection. And also in the Metta Sutta, the end of the Metta Sutta, the Buddha speaks of resolving upon this mindfulness in all the postures, and then he says, without falling into mistaken views, guiding the mind away from greed, one is not born again. So when I first read these texts, I was confused, because I had always learned that metta was, a practice where you develop loving kindness. And Vipassana was the only practice that led to liberation. And I always thought of metta as a second-class practice. Vipassana was really where it was at. And that's often the way it's shared. You get maybe one metta sitting a day, or maybe 5 minutes sometimes. Oh, yeah, let's do this, it's nice, but, spend all our time on Vipassana. And the metta, oh yeah, that's nice, but that little bit of loving kindness practice isn't enough to give you a taste of what it's all about. And I can say from my own experience, all that did for me was to create dosa about metta. I really thought it was just an idiotic practice. Until my teachers told me, no, you can't do Vipassana now, you have to do metta. And they made me do that for 6 months. I was not happy. At least not at first. But I might not have been happy, but I am obedient. So I did what I was told, sometimes through gritted teeth. And I'm stubborn, so it took a long time, but eventually I realized how wrong I had been. So what I was focused on was, in Vipassana, it's a practice where we see things clearly. It's a path of insight that leads directly to wisdom. Metta, on the other hand, is about boundless kindness. It's a path of concentration that leads to compassion. And what I eventually learned when I got over my stubbornness was it's the back door into insight. Insight. Because that boundlessness of metta, that limitlessness of metta, doesn't have any ego in it. And when you let go of that small I, there's a lot you can see. So the doorway into the Dhamma for Vipassana is absolute reality. But the doorway that we go through with metta is very different. It's conventional reality. It's that back door. We go through a series of categories when we do this practice that are all about the stuff of our lives. Starting with this mind and body we call me, I. And going on through a series of categories of people in the world, And in doing that, we see all the hindrances, all the ways we relate to different people with greed or aversion or delusion. And as it says in the Metta Sutta, guiding the mind away from greed. We guide the mind away from this again and again and again. Focus the mind on the loving kindness instead. So eventually we get a groove in the mind, a habit that we've created of accessing that limitless, boundless kindness and unhooking from all these habitual forms of dosa that we tend to live in this conventional world. And in doing this, we abandon ill will. So metta by itself doesn't lead to liberation. By itself, it doesn't generate liberating wisdom. But it gives us a view of wisdom and leads in that direction of liberation. And wanting to speak in this context about metta bhavana, cultivation of metta, and vipassana bhavana, the cultivation of insight, and how they interrelate and interact. As you've already figured out now, if you don't know already, they're very different practices. Metta bhavana, the cultivation of metta, is a samatha practice. It's a concentration practice. And of all the concentration practices that are described in the texts, it is the one that also cultivates this quality of metta. And as any other concentration practice, though, it develops what is called unity of mind, unification of mind. And this refers to a mind that is concentrated and focused on one thing, and one thing only, just Vipassana, on the other hand, does something quite different. Because what we develop in Vipassana is diversity of moment to moment to moment awareness. So whatever objects that arise that are predominant, we pay attention to that object. And it could be anything. So we're not focusing the mind in one place. We're allowing the awareness to connect with whatever is predominant in any given moment. In Vipassana, there can be focus and concentration, but it's momentary, just that object, and then that object, and then that object. So it feels quite, in the experience of it, it's not fixed and focused, it feels quite dynamic. And in the Vipassana practice, when the mind is quite quiet, it feels like bing, 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 bing. There are objects arising all around the mind, and the mind is just connecting with each one as it arises and passes away. It's very like popcorn. But it certainly doesn't go to that still focus of samatha practice, that where the mind is just quiet. So the Vipassana practice uproots the hindrances. The metta practice pacifies them. I like to think that the metta practice also embraces everything. So with Vipassana, we pay attention in order to see clearly, to know, to understand. But in the metta practice, we pay attention in order to care. It's very simple. This is what gives metta its power and its protection, because it excludes nothing. Nothing is excluded from that care, that attitude of kindness. Because when we're cultivating metta, we're using other people as the objects of metta. So we're dealing with other beings. There's this external care we are developing. And of course, what comes up when we do this is all our internal reactivity. One of my American Dhamma teacher friends says, when you practice metta, everything that is not metta comes up to be seen. And it's really true. All the snakes come out of their holes. So to cultivate metta successfully, we have to also develop this inner care about all of that. Oh, wonderful. It's not really what we want to do, but it's what's onward leading. The first noble truth is the noble truth of dukkha. Dukkha being whatever is unsatisfactory, suffering, difficult. And it's a noble truth because it liberates the mind. If we don't care about dukkha, we can't know it. It's just a problem. It's just something that gets in the way of our practice. It's just something we're doing wrong. It's something we have to fix or avoid or overcome. But all these views of dukkha are actually forms of resistance. The inner attitude of acceptance that comes with metta is so absolutely essential to understand dukkha. A beloved teacher of mine, Manindraji, used to always say, surrender to the law. And the law in that case, what he meant was the way things are, the law of Dhamma. And I love the word surrender. It's like give up resistance. And that speaks to this wholehearted, beautiful willingness to receive phenomena, no matter what's arising in your practice. That attitude of metta applied inwardly is what we develop when we cultivate metta. Because in order to cultivate metta, there has to be balance. We have to come to a place, and we realize this experientially when it happens. We have to come to a place where we can just acknowledge, feel, accept, and let whatever is there be there, without fixing it or trying, without engaging in it, without doing anything, except just let it be there in the background, acknowledge it, and incline to kindness. It's that moment when your knee is killing you, and you just breathe deeply and go, oh, this really hurts. I really hate it. May I be well, happy, and peaceful anyway. Or maybe you're just really sleepy. And it's like you acknowledge the sleepiness and you say, oh, may I be at ease with this. Or you came here for peace and quiet and your mind is not giving you a moment of silence. It's telling you all the old stories again and again and again, and you're full of doubt and restlessness. And you just look at it all and go, may I be well, happy, and peaceful anyway. There's no movement to try to fix or change or anything. It's just acknowledge, feel, you almost bow to it and go, but I'm not feeding this. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. You go to the wholesome. You go to the metta. And when there's no longer any movement to fix, to change, there's no resistance, it leaves everything to come and go as is its nature. So I don't have to say much more to really convey how important and valuable this is to the Vipassana practice. When we are cultivating Vipassana and have this metta attitude, it changes everything. So we stop fighting with reality. We stop trying to change ourselves. We can just see things as they are in a really impersonal way. It's just, oh, that's arising, that's arising, that's arising. Oh, whoa. And we might have to take a moment, go, oh, may I be at ease with this? Oh, this is interesting. Okay, whatever. You know, we can actually be with it rather than trying to push it away or fix it. And it's this attitude of metta that allows us to do vipassana without trying to push through experience, get around experience, to be liberated so that we don't have to feel anything. Because our desire to be free of suffering can be laced with so much dosa. And it's that very dosa that keeps us from being liberated. But with an attitude of metta, it's like, well, this is what's happening. What can I see here? And metta, the word metta in Pali, comes from a root that is related to friendliness, mitra. So we learn to be friendly with experience, friendly with our reactivity, and of course to have a friendly attitude towards other people, other beings, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. So inwardly and outwardly, there is this profound attitude of friendliness that we uncover. So again, from the Anguttara Nikaya.
E di nuovo dall'Anguttara Nikaya.
The Buddha says, I do not see even one other thing on account of which ill will is abandoned, so much as the liberation of mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of mind by loving kindness, latent ill will does not arise, and arisen ill will is abandoned. One who attends carefully to the liberation of mind by loving kindness, latent or unarisen ill will does not arise, and arisen ill will is abandoned. So we do this internally and externally. Internally towards whatever arises, externally towards other beings. It's like turning off a tap. You know, all of this habit of dosa, whether it's fear, anger, irritation, resentment, whatever it is, it changes not only our vipassana practice, but it changes our life in the world. It's just this huge shift that can happen. So the vipassana practice and the metta practice work together in tandem. I was saying to somebody in the group today, it's like two beautiful horses pulling a carriage. If one is stronger than the other, you just go in a circle. But if the metta horse and the vipassana horse are equal strength, you go forward, and you can go forward quite quickly. So developing skill in metta is really, really important, just as important as developing skill in vipassana. And when the metta is as strong as the vipassana, then things really begin to shift. It takes a little patience, it takes persistence, just like any practice. But we call this practice for a reason. We don't call it perfect. It's practice because we're not perfect. That's how we purify and uncover that perfection that's already there. By patient, persistent, kind practice. And it's not a race. It doesn't matter how slow or fast you are. We live in a very competitive culture. You can experience the relief here of just putting that down. It doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter. Because once you begin to walk this path, and you persistently and kindly walk it, you'll get to the end, and that's the point. So I want to close with another quote. The one from the Jataka, the last one, that you do have.
Yes.
So this is from one of the Jataka tales, where the Buddha's previous lives are being described. And it said, just as water cools both good and bad, and washes away impurity and dust. Develop metta for friend and foe alike, and having reached perfection in metta, you will attain enlightenment. Having uncovered the perfection of metta, you will attain enlightenment. Because the purity of mind that is metta, and the purity of mind of deep wisdom are in us all to be uncovered. Thank you all for your kind attention, and thank you all